Good afternoon and a very warm welcome indeed to today's iOB business webinar. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on here. My name is Ben and I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business, and I will be talking you through today's webinar presentation. Okay, so just before we get started off, do let me know if you can hear me okay. Do let me know if you can see me okay. And in just a moment's time, I'm going to bring the presentation up on screen there that we have for you as well. Okay, so as we go throughout today's webinar presentations, very important that I tell you, if you do have any questions, please do feel free to ask them. We always have a couple of questions. It's always a pleasure to answer them, and you can get your questions answered at the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar session. We usually run that for a few minutes at the end. It's usually very valuable and it's very enjoyable for me to do as well, to give further value from the webinar and answer any questions that you might have as well. Okay, so let's get ourselves set up for today. Welcome to those of you that are joining us. Pleasure to see you. All right, fantastic. So those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. Pleasure to have you here. And those of you that are coming back for a second, third, fourth, fifth webinar, even, I'm sure, thank you very much to you as well. All right, so let's get the video switched off. So you won't be able to see my face, but in just a moment's time, you should be able to see the presentation that we have up on screen for you there as well. All right, there we go. Okay, so now you should be able to hear my voice and you should be able to see the presentation that we have up on screen for you as well. Okay, so in between each of the three core topics that we're going to speak about today, we are going to take a brief pause as well to make sure that you have an opportunity to jot down any notes and indeed ask away with any questions that you might have as well. Okay, so let's get started. 3 reasons why failing in business is essential for growth. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, excellent. So just doing a final quick sound check there, making sure everything's all good. That's perfect. So 3 reasons why failing in business is essential for growth. Let's talk about what those 3 reasons could be. All right, so first of all, my name is Ben and I'm a business coach. I specialize in working with small businesses to help them achieve stability and to help them to achieve growth long term. It's my passion. It's my pleasure. This is what I get to do every day. And it's a genuinely amazing thing. I'm very happy to be on this webinar with you today. So discussion points. Let's start off with topic number 1. You develop significant confidence. Okay, this is something that's going to be very, very important through the course of your business career. Number 2, from our mistakes, we learn. Okay, this is extraordinarily important, and it's a point that we're going to spend a little bit of time on. And finally, nothing is ever perfect the first time. Okay, so we're going to talk about what each 3 of these points mean. We're going to run you through the presentation, and we're going to take a pause in between each of the 3 core topics to make sure that you got a chance to, as we said, jot down any questions and indeed ask away anything you'd like to know about the webinar and take down any notes as well. Okay, so let's get started with topic number 1. You develop significant confidence. Okay, so each time you experience failure, your fear of failing again slightly reduces. Okay, now what this means is often when we're newcomers to the business space, we find ourselves in an environment perhaps where we're maybe not trying to really attempt anything too risky, too big, too out there, because if we do, we're worried that we're going to essentially fall flat on our face. And this isn't a feeling that any of us want. It's not a feeling that any of us enjoy. Okay, well, that being said, okay, as you develop into an entrepreneur, you might begin to enjoy that feeling of failure. Okay, but each time you experience failure, your fear of failing again reduces slightly. Okay, now it's not to say that you're never, ever, ever going to be scared of failing. Okay, people that are doing very big things in business, I'm sure, still have a fear of failure to an extent. Okay, but what we must do is overcome that fear of failure. And this is something that we can really begin to think about. So when you experience this failure, you've experienced it for the first time or the second time or the third time, you've overcome that fear barrier that would have previously stopped you from doing something simply because you were scared that it wasn't going to work out. Okay, so before we've ever failed before in business, we do have a bit of a, not all of us, but a lot of us have a bit of a thing in our mind that says, well, if I do that and I fail, it's going to be really embarrassing. And that's something that we need to begin to work through. Okay, so resilience And facing adversity is a big, big part of running a business. In fact, it's an enormous part of running a business because we face adversity in lots of different ways every single day. All right. There's different things coming up. Sometimes we have hardship, sometimes we have wins. It completely depends on so many factors. Okay. But what this will all be worth is the opportunity to earn for yourself, be your own boss, run your own system, run your own business. There's so much to be gained compared to potentially having a little bit of difficulty getting there. So resilience in facing adversity, it is a big part of business. You have to be able to stand up, stand by your decisions, admit when you've made a mistake, and move forward with it. And we don't want to move forward through our business denying the fact that we ever have or ever will make a mistake, because acknowledging the fact that these were mistakes then allows us the opportunity to create solutions to fix these problems going forward and make sure that whatever happened before doesn't happen again. Okay, we improve our systems, we improve our business. This is how we grow. So you must understand that part of growing a business is failing, is making mistakes, because if you never make the mistake, you'll never understand the solution and therefore very unlikely will ever significantly improve. So the more confident you begin to feel, the more challenges you consider taking on. Okay, so we call this element the momentum element, where you are winning and winning and winning and winning and winning. And each time you do, you'll decide that that challenge is something that you can tackle. Okay. So right now, that big challenge at the end of the line feels impossible. If you ever played video games, you've got a boss at the end of the level that you need to move past. Right now, that seems almost impossible. But by the time you get to the end of the level, you've done all the training, you've made all the mistakes, you've corrected all of your mistakes, you've come up with all the solutions. You now understand what you need to do to move past that boss, move past that final challenge. Okay. So you begin to become more confident because you're more skilled, you're more educated, you're more crafted in what you're able to do. Therefore, you begin to feel more confident in taking on these bigger challenges because you've got a track record of success, you've got a track record of mistakes and failure. You've learned from the mistakes, you've learned from the failure, and you can push forward through to the next challenge. Now, this is why we're talking about this significant confidence development, because it's very important that you do these things continually, that you take on new challenges all the time, because this in turn will develop confidence for you. It's very difficult to have immense confidence in anything if we never try it. Okay. It's the same as trying a new hobby, trying a new sport, taking on a new challenge. Business in this way, in this sense, in this context, is very similar. Okay. We have to get into it. We have to try it in order to understand what we need to do to improve. So confidence allows you to think more freely and with higher ambition. Okay. Now, some of us were born and blessed with confidence, others weren't. Okay. Some of us have to work on developing our confidence. And often we don't really know what it feels like to enjoy that level of confidence where we truly believe that we can achieve these things. And often that's because you've not yet proven to yourself, even on a tenth or a fractional level, that you can achieve something remotely similar or even a step on the way to that journey. So let's say that you wanted to buy a house. The house is valued at $500,000 and you think, wow, the most I've ever earned in a year is £15,000. How am I ever going to earn enough money to buy a house like that? Okay, well, this is what we have to do. We have to begin making small changes now so that they can take compound effect and grow over time to allow us to build the confidence, build the skills, build the habits that are going to get us into that £500,000 house. Okay, it won't happen overnight. No, and it probably won't even be your next house. Okay, but it will come to you if you continually focus on building your confidence, building your skills, building your strategy and all the other stuff that goes around it. Okay. So that brings us to the end of topic number 1. What we're going to do now is take a brief pause as promised. We'll give you a chance to jot down any notes, ask away with any questions that you might have, and I'll see you again in just a moment for topic number 2. Perfect. So let's move on to topic number 2. From our mistakes, we learn. Okay. Now, each time we hit a stumbling block or make a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn something new. Now, we touched on this in the last topic of today's webinar, where we were talking about the fact that in order to build confidence, we must continually attempt new challenges. Okay, it's like learning how to ride a bike. If you never attempt to learn, you will never be able to ride a bike. Therefore, you'll never be able to just jump on that bike one day and have the confidence to just go on a ride for as long as you like. Business is very similar, again, in that context. I like using these comparables because they make sense in the context of what we're talking about. So each time we hit a stumbling block, okay, something in our way, something that we find it difficult to overcome, or we make a mistake, we fail, we try something, we do something wrong, it's an opportunity to learn something new, okay? And when we take this opportunity to learn something new, what that really means is figuring out why whatever it was that we tried to do didn't work. It's an opportunity. Mistakes are opportunities to learn. If you continue looking at them this way, you'll have a much more positive outlook on your business and the growth of your business. Because a very common mistake that I see is with early business owners or even established business owners, something will go wrong and then they'll become frustrated and they'll try and shut that frustration out. They'll shut that mistake off and pretend like it didn't happen. They'll ignore it and they'll just want to forget about it. Okay. Now, to me, this is one of the major differences between those unsuccessful businesses and those successful businesses. And the reason for that is because successful business owners look back on the mistake. They don't shut it out. They don't push it away. They revel in it. They enjoy it. They look at what went wrong and they understand what can be fixed. So if something did not go the way they had expected it to go, they take a moment to review it, they figure it out, and they move on from wherever they left off. And this is very, very important that you learn this skill because it's not even just a skill, it's a talent to have where you allow yourself to come at new challenges and old challenges alike with open eyes and understand, okay, was it me? Was it my planning? Was it my preparation? Was it my execution? Was it something that the team did? Okay, ultimately, it's always your responsibility, but it's good to know why something happened. So, do we need to train the team? Do I need to train myself? Do I need to learn more? Do I need to, use less money next time, more money next time? Do I need to use more resources or less resources? What happened? Okay, the sooner you begin to understand this, the more you're going to be able to help yourself and therefore help your business. So, the only real mistake would be not analyzing your mistake to assess what went wrong. Okay. To me, the only true mistake that you can make in business, amongst, of course, many obvious mistakes, but the only true mistake, okay, is not analyzing what happened. Now, this being said, of course, please don't ever do something that would put yourself in serious financial difficulty, like putting your way too many funds or resources into a campaign, because of course that is a mistake, okay? But what we're talking about here in the context of confidence, in the context of making mistakes, to me, the only real mistake is not analyzing what went wrong so that you can assess it and fix it and go forwards from it. Okay. So when you face a new challenge or try and complete the task you initially failed in, you'll have a different perspective. Okay. Now, perspective is everything. It's when you wake up in the morning and you decide to look at life one of two ways. Today is an opportunity or I can't be bothered. Okay. Essentially, those are the two types of opportunities you're going to get in the morning. Okay. Two ways that you can look at life. Now, personally, I choose to look at each day as a new opportunity. And I would love for you to have this perspective when you're facing challenges, when you're thinking about things that you initially failed in. Okay. Because you understand the context behind what we're talking about here. This challenge that you're facing can be daunting, can be intimidating, can be something that you feel like you can't overcome, or you say to yourself, that's going to be an amazing challenge. I can't wait to try and figure that one out. Okay. Now, if you don't have enough of a skill set or you don't have enough of a refined skill set, develop it. Learn how to move forwards. Okay. Because you have access to so many skill sets, so many resources, so many people for advice that you can literally push yourself through almost any business barrier. Okay. So understand that help is a great thing. Understand that growth is a wonderful thing. And you can do that for yourself and you can very likely do it for others as well. Okay. So you'll have a different perspective. Instead, you won't be looking at this thinking, I'm going to fail. You'll be looking at this thinking, I can't wait to overcome it. Now, allow yourself to fail, learn from it and improve. Compound your learnings to refine your ability as a business leader. Okay. Every successful business leader you see today will have learned a number and is still learning a number of very important lessons in life, in business. They'll have to work on their mindset. They'll have to work on their perspective. Look at having a very, very successful business as training for an elite sport or training to be elite in anything, okay? You have to dedicate yourself to it to learn, improve, become better. Otherwise, it'll simply do probably average to okay, but it'll never achieve beyond your wildest dreams, which is, of course, well, what many of us want. Okay, so that brings us to the end of topic number 2. Again, I'm going to give you a brief moment. Please do take the time to jot down any notes and indeed ask away with any questions. Thank you for the questions so far. I'll get that for you during the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. I'll see you again in just a moment. Wonderful. So let's move ourselves on to topic number 2 now. Topic number 3, sorry, which will bring us to the end of today's webinar. So the third and final topic of today's session. Now, nothing is ever perfect the first time. Okay, let's talk about this. A common factor in procrastination is a desire for your task to be perfect the first time around. Okay, so if we ever think about the time when we knew we had to do something, but we didn't for a significant amount of time, like we left it to the last minute, we let a week go by, 2 weeks go by, a month go by before we even sat down to work on it, often that analysis paralysis, as it's fondly referred to in the business world, and I'm of course sure as well many other worlds, but a common factor in this procrastination is that you want it to be perfect. Okay, you want it to be absolutely nail on the head the first time around. Now, something that will hopefully bring you a lot of comfort and a lot of reassurance is the fact that nothing is ever perfect the first time around. Okay, it just isn't. There are so many examples of this in the world where something is tested and then fixed, and then tested and then fixed, and then tested and then fixed. Okay, so what you must understand is that procrastinating because you want something to be perfect is something that should be recognized. If you recognize that within yourself, accept the fact that it's going to be imperfect. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be extremely good, because I'm sure it will, but it's not going to be perfect. And if you stop believing within yourself that you have to make every single thing perfect, otherwise you're not going to bother, you'll find yourself with a lot more time, a lot more freedom, a lot more space to go and do what it is that you need to do. And you'll do it much more calmly, because you can begin to understand the fact that, okay, this isn't going to be perfect. That's fine. That's something I'm happy with. Okay. Now, it's better to begin with the knowledge that it may be imperfect, because you're making progress. Okay. If you begin this way and understand that this probably isn't going to be perfect, you're going to take an awful lot of pressure off yourself. Now, when that pressure is removed, you can think freely, you can write freely, you can speak more clearly, because you're not worried about making a mistake. You're not worried about getting it wrong. And of course, when you begin to worry, you begin to tense up. And tensing up is when you begin to make mistakes. You'll do something not properly. You'll do something imperfectly. You'll make a mistake in your speech. You'll make a mistake in what you're writing, what you're creating, because you're thinking so hard about trying to make it perfect, trying to make it flawless, that you put an immense amount of pressure on yourself to perfect it, that ironically you'll end up making it imperfect by trying to make it perfect. Now, it is then easier to retrospectively look back at your work and make edits and improvements on something that has already been created. Okay, so once it's been created in its imperfect form, you now have an enormous foundation to build from. You simply need to tweak and edit the foundation to perfect it, or, well, nothing's ever perfect, right? But let's just say for, the purpose of this, we're looking to massively improve it. So when we have this foundation, this base, if you like, that we can go back, correct, fix, adjust, it's so much easier, because instead of writing on a blank page, we're looking at a foundation that we've already built, and we're just sort of picking little bits that we want to perfect. Okay, now this is why it is so much more effective to do it this way, and you'll actually, believe it or not, probably move through quicker than if you sit and procrastinate on it for a while, because you've got the first draft down. Now you simply need to just go back and edit it. instead of sitting for a month and wondering, well, how do I do this? How am I going to make it perfect? Okay. Now, of course, what's important behind this is always committing to improvement, always committing to improving whatever it is that you're working on or that you sell or that you have. Now, nothing is ever perfect the first time round, and you shouldn't pressurize yourself to make this the case. Okay. Final affirmation statement there. And the final point of this webinar, do not try and perfect something. Okay. The first time around, because if you do, it will not allow you to think freely or think clearly and be productive and effective. All right. So nothing is ever perfect, the first time around, and you shouldn't pressurize yourself to make this the case. Now, that brings us to the end of topic number 3 and therefore the end of the webinar. So what we'll do is we'll take one final pause. I'm going to go ahead and pause this just now so that you can jot down any notes and ask away with any final questions. Thank you for the other question. I'll get that in just a moment. So then we're going to do the recap after this pause, and then we'll do the Q&A segment of today's webinar. So I'll see you again in just a moment's time. Perfect. So let's recap today's session. Number 1, failure can mean reduction of fear. Okay. Failure is not always a bad thing. Number 2, each mistake is an opportunity to learn. Okay. We look at it with perspective as an opportunity. And finally, remove the pressure of perfection. Allow yourself to go back and edit something that you've already built instead of procrastinating on something that hasn't yet been created. All right. So as always, a massive thank you for taking the time to attend today's webinar. It's been a genuine pleasure speaking with you. If you'd like to talk to a member of our team, you can head over to iob-business.com/talk, and you can book a call at a time that suits you. When you do follow that link, you'll see a calendar just like this one on screen. So I'll leave that up for you and I'll answer the questions. Question number 1, I worry that doing something imperfectly will take longer. Yeah, of course, understandable. So what I would do is I'd present the argument that potentially procrastination and desire of perfection could take longer than creating an imperfect first draft. As I said towards the end of that topic number 3, it's something that if you sort of are willing to create an imperfect draft of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it be a campaign or a blog post, random examples, you could create that possibly, within the day, and then you can perfect it for the rest of the week. Okay. Versus, procrastinating on it potentially for weeks on end due to the fact that you're not sure how to make it perfect. So yeah, I understand your concern completely, but in my opinion, it takes longer procrastinating than it does to create something imperfectly. Great question. Thank you. Next question. I seem to fail over and over again. Okay, cool. So big question here. Are you learning from your mistakes? All right. Now, implement solutions into each attempt. All right. Now, what you'll see yourself improving. Analysis is key, but also self-reflection is key. Don't focus just on the mistakes that you're making, but focus on the growth. What are you making today versus day one? If we're talking about this in a business context, how many clients do you have today versus day one? How long have you been in business versus, of course, day one? Okay. If you're still here after a few months, chances are you're doing something right. So, again, to me, it could be a simple perspective thing. Yes, potentially you do fail over and over, but the bigger question is, what are you learning each time and how are you improving? Great question. Again, thank you. Do we have any more? No, doesn't look like we do. Okay. Well, as always, it's been a genuine pleasure and I look forward to seeing you again on the next iOB business webinar. Take care and bye for now.